Hi brothers and sisters. This video is a direct follow-up to the Enoch update video. I'll be briefly summarizing the content of that video, but if you're confused at all while watching this video, I suggest that you go back to watch the Enoch update video afterwards. Also, if you haven't watched the original Rapture Timeline video explaining how this timeline was put together, then I highly recommend that you go watch that later as well. As a final note before we get started, the End Times document has been updated, so please check it out again if you feel called to share it. So this list of Rapture watch dates is where we left off on the Enoch update video. We're trying to figure out which date fits here on the timeline for the first Rapture event. We've currently passed the October 14th to 17th timeframe focused on Shemini Atzeret. Now our focus is on the next two sets of watch dates here. Cheshvan 10, the day God told Noah to enter the ark, and Cheshvan 17, the day Noah's flood began. So just to briefly summarize from the Enoch update video, our journey of watching for the rapture was framed using Elijah's rapture journey from 2 Kings chapter 2. In this passage, Elijah started in Gilgal and traveled to three locations, Bethel, Jericho, and the Jordan River, before he was finally raptured. Likewise, the watchmen were pointed to three watch periods using the September 23rd to 24th dates given by Jesus to brother Joshua, and the three calendars, Gregorian, Julian, and Enochian, shown to Sister Lingwe. The dates for these three watches were determined by the transposing of the September 23rd to 24th dates onto each of the three calendars. However, as I suspected in the previous video, the third watch on October 14th to 17th would pass because Elijah wasn't raptured at the third destination of the Jordan River, but only after he had continued walking for some time beyond the Jordan. The 2 Kings chapter 2 passage seems to indicate that the rapture doesn't happen until the fourth watch at an unidentified location. Matthew 14:22-27 seems to foreshadow this as well, specifying that Jesus didn't come down from the mountain and walked out on the stormy sea to save his followers until the fourth watch. This image of a boat on stormy waters coincidentally matches Noah's Ark and the flood, which is what we're now focused on as the fourth watch. Since both Cheshvan 10 and 17 are important dates in the flood story, which date should we choose to be the fourth watch? Let's review the words that Jesus spoke to brother Joshua to help us figure this out. So in 2018, Jesus said to Joshua, "From the time Israel became a nation in 1948, there will be 77 years to the Exodus. On the 23rd and the 24th of September 2025, I will come to take my church. Then after, there will be a 7-year tribulation on earth on those left behind. On the 15th of September 2032, I will return to earth as king." This is from brother Joshua's original Sent Twins interview. For all of those who are focused on the Feast of Trumpets for the Rapture, notice that Jesus never named any feast days in this message. So then on the night of October 13th, Jesus said to Joshua, "The 14th and 15th days will pass. Then on the 16th and 17th of October 2025 will be the rapture of the church." Okay, so let's try to understand these two messages together with the rapture journey we've been on thus far, and see if we can get the bigger picture here. In the original message, Jesus used the word Exodus, not rapture, and said that he would come to take his church on September 23rd to 24th, 2025. If we look at Exodus 3:8, God uses nearly the same language saying, "I am come down to deliver the Israelites." The Israelites weren't delivered the same day God said those words to Moses. Those words signified the start of the process or journey leading to the deliverance of the Israelites. Similarly, our journey to the rapture started on September 23rd to 24th, with God leading us through three destinations of watches using the three calendars. So then, how are we to understand the second message Jesus gave to Joshua? First, Jesus says that the 14th and 15th days will pass. Since the message was given on the night of October 13th, right before the third watch of Shemini Atzeret on October 14th to 15th, it seems reasonable to infer that Jesus meant that the third watch over the next 2 days would pass. Then Jesus says that the rapture, specifically using the word rapture this time, would be on October 16th to 17th. I found it very interesting that Jesus didn't say October before 14th and 15th, almost as if he didn't want us to get October 14th to 15th on the Gregorian calendar confused with October 16th to 17th on another calendar. So then what is the calendar that Jesus meant when he said October 16th to 17th? Well, it just so happens that we were already looking at Cheshvan 17, the 17th day of the 8th month on the Enochian or Hebrew calendar. October originally meant 8th month since octo means 8 in Latin, so October 16th to 17th can easily be translated to Cheshvan 16 to 17. It also makes sense that we would stick to the Enochian or Hebrew calendar, since we already traveled past the Gregorian and Julian calendars on our journey. Because the true Enoch calendar is one day ahead of the Hebrew calendar, Cheshvan 17 on the Enoch calendar is Cheshvan 16 on the Hebrew calendar, meaning Cheshvan 16 to 17 is a combination of Cheshvan 17 on both calendars. Those dates translate to November 7th through 9th on the Gregorian calendar. So before we move forward, I want to briefly talk about why Noah's Ark and the flood foreshadow the rapture and the 7-year tribulation. The ark was what saved Noah, his family, and the animals from the destruction caused by the flood as it was lifted into the sky by the floodwaters, foreshadowing Jesus rapturing those who are in him as destruction falls on the earth. The flood then symbolizes the tribulation and shows that it starts at the same time the rapture happens. Since the flood was the greatest physical miracle God ever performed in terms of sheer magnitude, it would be fitting that the even greater miracle of the rapture taking millions of people to heaven will be performed on the same day. So now let's take a quick look at how each of the 4 watches fall on the Hebrew calendar. The first watch was on September 23rd to 24th and fell on Tishri 1, the Feast of Trumpets. This was day 1 of our rapture journey. The second watch, day 14, was on October 6th to 7th and fell on Tishri 14, the Feast of Tabernacles Eve. The third watch, day 22, was on October 14th to 15th and fell on Tishri 22, Shemini Atzeret. The 40th day will fall on November 1st to 2nd, or Cheshvan 10, the day God told Noah to enter the ark. And lastly, the fourth watch, day 46 to 47, will be on November 7th through 9th, Cheshvan 16 to 17, pointing to the beginning of Noah's flood. So here at the bottom, I've added the 40 days that lead up to Noah entering the ark, and then the 7 days until the flood began. So why is the number 40 so significant? In the Bible, it's almost always used by God as the number of testing. Here are some examples of that. The Israelites were tested twice for 40 days to wait for Moses to return from Mount Sinai with God's commandments. The Israelites wandered 40 years before entering the Promised Land. After fleeing Queen Jezebel, Elijah traveled 40 days to Horeb, the mountain of God, to hear God's voice. And finally, Jesus fasted and was tempted by the devil for 40 days in the wilderness before beginning his ministry. I think any of us still watching for the rapture at this point, because of Brother Joshua's testimony, can relate to feeling spiritually tested ever since September 23rd to 24th. God seems to be testing us to see if we'll continue to hold on to our faith even as the 3 watch periods pass without the rapture happening. And if we are indeed being tested by God, wouldn't it make sense that the testing would last for 40 days? If Jesus himself was tested for 40 days in a physical wilderness, then why wouldn't his bride also be tested for 40 days in a spiritual wilderness? So if the 40 days of testing lead us to the day Noah entered the ark, then what about the significance of the 7 days leading up to the flood? Those days may fit the biblical pattern of a 7-day consecration in the doorway of the tabernacle as seen here in Leviticus 8, where Aaron and his sons were being prepared to enter the priesthood of God. Since we're called to be a royal priesthood in 1 Peter 2:9, it would be fitting for us to be consecrated for 7 days in the doorway of the metaphorical ark, which itself is just a giant tabernacle. Then we would be raptured to heaven as the flood or tribulation begins. So now I want to share several biblical passages that lend support to the first rapture happening on the day Noah's flood began. One interesting detail I noticed in John 2 is that the second temple took 46 years to build. To put this into perspective, the first temple built by King Solomon only took 7 years to build. The building of the second temple was delayed many times over the years, resulting in the long construction time. If the bride of Christ is supposed to be the New Jerusalem and the new temple, then she may possibly need to be built up over a period of 46 days before being raptured, just like the second temple needed to be slowly built up over 46 years before being completed. Next, in the prophecy of Daniel's 70 weeks from Daniel 9:24 to 27, we see that the end is described like a flood, an obvious reference to Noah's flood. Then, in 2 Peter 3, the end-time tribulation, described here as the present heavens and earth being reserved for fire, is compared to Noah's flood that destroyed the world. Finally, in Matthew 24, Jesus himself likens the event of the first rapture to the flood that occurred during the days of Noah. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Then shall 2 be in the field, the one shall be taken and the other left. 2 women shall be grinding at the mill, the one shall be taken and the other left. So to conclude, I believe that November 7th through 9th, or Cheshvan 16 to 17, are the highest watch dates left for this year. In my opinion, the picture of the flood lifting Noah's ark into the air is the most direct foreshadow in the scriptures of the first rapture for the bride and the start of the 7-year tribulation. As I mentioned in the previous video, this time frame is only a few days before November 11th, the day Pastor Philip Barnett, who is credible when it comes to prophetic words, was shown that the nuclear war begins. I recall many people having dreams that the rapture would happen just before the nukes start to fall, so the timing seems to line up with those dreams. I would also keep an eye out for November 1st to 2nd, or Cheshvan 10, as the 40th day of our testing and the day Noah was told to enter the ark. If our 40 days of testing are to end on that day, then I expect that something big will happen, either physically in the world or spiritually among the bride, that will indicate with certainty that we have 7 days left. Once we have that certainty, we will no longer be in a state of testing because we will know when Jesus is coming to get us. Instead, we will then be in a state of consecration as we wait in the doorway of the ark, preparing ourselves to be as ready as possible for when he calls us home. So this is the final version of the timeline, with the dates for the first rapture of the bride now filled in. I've also made a brief update to the May 31st, 2026 date regarding the third temple, changing the description to say that the third temple either begins construction or is completed that day, since I'm not totally sure which it is. As for the other watch time frame of December 13th to 16th, I think it's a far weaker candidate for the first rapture compared to November 7th through 9th, so I won't say any more about it for now. If somehow the flood dates also pass by, I will consider them again. At any rate, the end time signs in the world just continue to accelerate, so keep holding on to your faith and keep spreading the gospel with what little time remains. Also, remember to check out the updated end times document linked in the description box as well if you feel called to share it. God bless my brothers and sisters, and hope to see you all soon.